All right. I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation for healthy relationships for adults. So I will quickly share my screen. Here we go. All right, we're going to dive right into it here. Let's see what we got. So this is our presentation. This is going to kind of just walk us through what being in a healthy relationship is, what it looks like, some red flags to avoid, and then some green flags that we want to see. So we are the Center for Abused Persons. Take an overlook real quick of just kind of what we'll be talking about. So we'll talk about our services here. We'll dive into some objectives, talk about an unhealthy relationship, and then we'll dive into what a healthy relationship looks like, and then some safety tips, and then what services we provide. So here at CAP, we are a nonprofit agency, and we're dedicated to reducing and preventing domestic violence and sexual assault in our community. We serve Charles County victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. We have a 24-hour crisis hotline and a lot of different services that we provide to the community, which we will talk about at the very end. We'll kind of break each of those services up. That way you can better understand them. So today, after this presentation, I really want you to, be able to understand, identify what a healthy relationship looks like, and then what an unhealthy relationship looks like so that we can better avoid domestic violence and sexual assault as a community. Okay, so here's some statistics that we're going to start off with. And just kind of keep in mind, anytime you are seeing statistics that they are, ever changing and evolving, and we're learning more and people are reporting more. So kind of take this, at its face value. But this, is kind of showing us that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men report having experienced severe, violence from an intimate partner, domestic violence in their life. I definitely want you to take that statistic in regards to men with a grain of salt, because you have to really think, how many men are experiencing domestic violence, but it's going unreported, because, we know that men are, raised to, not all men, but a lot of men are raised to believe, things like that are, a closed door, what happens in our home stays in our home, or to be tough and to not let things get to you, not ask for help, deal with it like a man, things like that. So a lot of men, they don't report. They don't report for fear of losing children, because a lot of times children are, custody is granted to the mom, or female abusers will hang that over their partner's head. If you report this and we get a divorce, well, I will take the kids and you'll never see them. So they're fearful, but it's harder for them to come forward for sure. And then here, in terms of sexual violence by an intimate partner, about 1 in 5 women and 1 in 13 men have experienced some form of sexual violence by an intimate partner. And then the statistic over here, roughly 14% of women and 5% men report having been stalked by a partner, an intimate partner. And we also need to kind of realize and understand that these numbers for the LGBTQ plus community are much higher. There's, a lot riding on the line in that community. For example, if you are someone who is in a relationship and you're not out yet, maybe you're not out to your family, it's harder to ask for help and get the help that you need, because if you're not ready to come out, then, by asking for help, you've outed yourself when you're not ready. And, your sexual preference can be used against you. A lot of abusers will do that to keep you in the relationship and kind of hang that over your head. So, that the LGBTQ plus community is suffering at greater numbers, and that's something that we really have to acknowledge. So we're going to begin by talking about what unhealthy relationships looks like. So these are some of the characteristics, and any kind of abuse that is in the relationship is unhealthy. So this includes non-consensual sexual or just non-consensual activity in general. Abusers will use a lot of manipulation and manipulative strategies to really almost brainwash their victim. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go, kind of that brainwashing, gaslighting type of abuse. And then a lot of uh, relationships that are unhealthy require justification or excuses for unwanted actions. For example, well, I wouldn't, she wouldn't be stalking me and constantly checking in on me and feel like she needs to track me if I didn't. Maybe I'm giving her a reason to do that. Or maybe if me talking to a certain someone makes her feel, uncomfortable and now she wants to track where I'm going all the time. Making those excuses for that unwanted behavior that, deep down we know is not healthy, but a lot of victims will make those excuses and kind of put that blame back on themselves for the actions that are being put on them from the abuser. And so these three categories are kind of an umbrella of types of abuse. So there are a lot of subcategories, I guess you could say, underneath these. There are a lot of other categories, and I'll kind of touch on a couple once we discuss these. But I feel like these are the most commonly known types of abuse. So we have emotional, physical, and sexual. Emotional, that is anything that the abuser says or does that will cause fear, that will lower self-esteem of the victim, manipulate and control their feelings. A lot of times their mind, their way of thinking, a lot of gaslighting, you will see here. So what gaslighting is, it's kind of when an abuser makes their victim, question their own perception of reality. So we will have a whole separate lunch and learn on gaslighting, because there is so much that goes into that and it happens so often. And that's something that happens in not just relationships, but in the workplace and in healthcare. So, when you're constantly tricked, to believe that that didn't happen. You hear something over and over and you start to question your own functioning and the way that you perceive reality. But a lot of times, with that emotional, like insults and public humiliation, who wants to be humiliated by their partner in front of, other people, thinking about if you go out on a double date or a dinner together and, that harassment and that humiliation that your partner will bring forward that makes you very uncomfortable. So a lot of things like that, that might seem small in the moment kind of get overlooked as red flags, but that is emotional abuse. So next we'll kind of spill into physical, and this is any intentional or unwanted contact with the victim's body by either the abuser or an object within the abuser's control. So I really want to talk about this. Physical abuse does not have to be skin to skin abuse or contact. It can be, I'm mad at my significant other, so I pick up my water jug and I toss it to them or at them, and maybe I have intentions to hit them or I don't, but I'm trying to show that I can harm you if I want to, even if I don't even have to touch you. It can also include things like a lot of victims will say that they could tell when their abuser was about to erupt or when something was about to, go sideways because, their facial expressions were changed. The perpetrator, the abuser's facial expressions would change, or even by, if you're in a closed room and an argument breaks out and then the abuser will oftentimes block the door or make their body bigger because they're trying to make themselves more intimidating and maintain that power and control so that you can't physically get out of the situation. So even things like that. We also have sexual abuse. And so this is any sexual behavior that is unwanted or interferes with the victim's rights to control, their circumstances and their sexual activity. We're going to talk a lot about consent in just a second, actually. So, things like rape, even unwanted, hand holding. We try to teach our kids, to really be straightforward with their own boundaries. When you're starting to date, do you want to hold hands with someone else? Do you want to give hugs in the hallway at school? Or what makes you feel comfortable and what do you not like? So being very, upfront and forward and, strong with those boundaries and setting those clear. But sometimes we hear sexual abuse and we think immediately, the extreme, and it's not always the case. So there's a lot that kind of goes into that as well. Um, Dating violence. So this is kind of an overlap of what we were just talking about. But here are some, more specific examples that fall under each of those categories. So emotional, physical, and sexual. Here it says emotional, is oftentimes difficult to recognize at first because these are things that you don't typically see. They're things that you're hearing, or maybe you're second guessing something, or you just get that gut feeling of something's wrong. Um, Insults, threats, embarrassment, isolation, and stalking are just some. But I definitely want to hone in on this word here, which is isolation. This is huge, and you will see, a lot of survivors who have been in a domestic violence or intimate partner violence situation. They will talk about how their abuser used isolation to pull them away from the people that they love and they can confide in outside of their relationship. So I we really need to understand that, an abuser is not going to come up to you and say, okay, well, in 2 weeks, I'm going to isolate you to the point where you don't feel comfortable to talk to your best friend anymore. Or, in 3 months from now, I'm going to manipulate you so much, and, find little ways to tell you that your family doesn't really love you. They're isolating you, they're pulling you away slowly from the people that you can confide in. And I like to, for a visual, kind of picture or imagine a radio in a car, and it's like, you're in the passenger seat and your abuser's in the driver's seat, and they, decide to change the volume of the radio. And so they, slowly turn the knob, but you don't see them. So you don't notice the volume getting quieter and quieter. And they do it so slowly and so carefully that pretty much before you even realize what's going on, it's silent and you're alone. So isolation is scary, and that's the reason why a lot of people struggle to get out and get resources that they need. Next, we have, physical again. So of course, the hitting, strangulation, use of weapons, stalking, destruction of property, a lot of animal abuse as well. Um, but even like we said, it doesn't have to be skin to skin. Physical is a lot, goes a lot deeper. And you'll also notice that some things kind of overlap, like stalking, for example. If you're being stalked, you physically feel afraid because you don't know where that person is. Are they outside watching me? Do they know where I'm going to be? When I'm getting off of work tomorrow, they, follow me home. We definitely encourage people to find alternate ways home, alternate ways to the grocery store. Always have multiple ways that you can get to and from somewhere that you go frequently. So that way, it'll kind of be a little trickier if someone is following you or stalking you to really know where you're at when you're and when you're at and where you're at and all that stuff. So next we have sexual, and this is, keep in mind regardless of the dating status. So, rape, coercion, this is, someone kind of slowly, maybe even over time, really makes you feel like you need to do something because, that's what they want you to do, pressuring. Um, and that can be a very hard one, kind of like how I, gave the example of a radio dial and it's slowly getting quieter and you don't realize that's what's happening. That can happen with coercion a lot of times too. It can be masked with good intentions, or it can be masked with little innocent, very innocent phrases or words, but you don't realize that you're slowly over time being pressured to do something that you didn't feel comfortable doing in the first place. And that's something that, we're trying to really teach our teens to be aware of. Um, Also, any unwanted acts and then refusal to participate in safe sex. A lot of this kind of falls into pregnancy coercion, sexual coercion, which will also be a whole other lunch and learn in itself as well. So, those are kind of just an overview there. But I do want to go back real quick. So, we talked about emotional, physical, sexual. There is a type of abuse that is economical, and that is one that gets overlooked a lot. So, economical is a type of abuse that your finances are controlled by the abuser. A lot of victims, they don't have jobs and it's not by their choice, but their abuser has restricted access to getting to and from a job or, building a resume, like things as simple as, you know, having a computer to build a resume or having a car to get to and from or hiding credit cards, hiding debit cards, things like that. That is economical abuse. And that is something that, again, isolates a person and it makes it easier for that abuser to maintain that control over their victim. So here we have, this wheel that I like to kind of use, and this is what we refer to as a cycle of abuse. And so typically, we like to think in our brains, I think it's easier for us to break it down if we see it as, oh, okay, well, we start with the honeymoon phase. That's, when you first start dating and things are great and a lot of red flags are overlooked because you're just in that state of bliss. Everything's good. Um, but it's not always at the beginning of a relationship. It can be years into a relationship, and we'll talk about that in a second, the way that this cycle flows, or kind of more so now we're thinking it kind of ping pongs here and there, depending on your relationship. Everyone's different. So typically, just kind of help think of it, this honeymoon phase is when things are great. Maybe it's after an explosion, you're getting gifts, apologies. I promise I won't change. I will never do that again. I can't, I would never want to do anything to hurt you. I'll make it up to you. And it can seem very calm. A lot of times, victims will feel like they are most loved in the honeymoon phase, almost so much that it, causes almost, a blackout from these phases, if that makes sense. So it makes it harder to remember, oh, well, he's, he or she is doing all of this honeymoon, apologies, gift giving, that your mind almost neglects all of the abuse that you've just gone through. But from honeymoon, typically you'll go to that tension building stage. And so this is, insults and threatening accusations, kind of that soft build up to finally exploding. The tension phase, it can be quick or it can be over days. It really just depends. But this explosion, this is where you'll see what I like to think of as the big abuse. So like throwing things, door slamming, verbally, verbal abusive phrases, words, sexual assaults, but also something that's important to note here is this explosion stage could also house, what some teens like to refer to as ghosting or the silent treatment, right? So, finally your partner, they're in this explosion stage and they are giving you the silent treatment. They go in the room, they close the door, or if you don't live together, they stop answering your calls, they stop talking to you, and it leaves you wondering, well, what did I do wrong? Or what do I need to change to make them not do that to me anymore? When really it's not your fault. That's another tactic that's being used to abuse you. Um, and then, typically after an explosion, there'll be a little short break before we kind of go around again. But like I said, we're trying to look at this as less of a, little clockwise here rotation and more of a, it depends on the relationship. And do we go straight from honeymoon, everything's great, to explosion? Which can cause someone to really walk on eggshells because you don't even have that tension phase to kind of know that, okay, my abuser is about to go off at any second. It's just from one extreme to the next. Or maybe you bounce back and forth between a honeymoon phase and tension phase for a long time until finally they explode. So it's just a very confusing cycle that really does depend, on the relationship, and every relationship is different. So next, we're going to kind of dive into sexual assault. And like we mentioned before, this is any contact against a person's will. It doesn't have to be just sexual activities. It can be, minor things like I mentioned before. But, we really need to, instill into especially our youth that no one is allowed to force you to interact in any sexual activity that you do not want to interact in. Kind of goes back to that coercion here. So when a person pressures or tricks or threatens or manipulates someone into having sex or any unwanted sexual activity, and like I mentioned, coercion can be quick or it can be taking place. An abuser can use coercion over days to coerce their victim into doing what they want them to do. And something huge that is another thing that we're really trying to kind of, hammer in the heads of our teens is that consent is important, right? So it's, something that is mutual, it's ongoing, it's an agreement between, two people on what they do and don't want to experience. And, this word, the fact that consent is ongoing. So, this when you're entering in a relationship, it's important to understand that, you sit down and you have a conversation about things that you are comfortable with, things that you're not comfortable with, but those things may change as you progress into the relationship, and that's okay. That's where you can revisit that discussion and, I wasn't okay with XYZ 6 months ago, but now I am because we're at a certain part in our relationship and trust is kind of coming in, things like that. And, if you're in a healthy relationship, that's okay. Um, Obviously, your partner, you can have those discussions and keep bringing them up and keep discussing what each person is okay with and what they're not. But it can also go the opposite way. So maybe on Thursday, I was okay with doing XYZ, but now it's Saturday and you're asking me to do this and I don't feel comfortable doing it. And that should be okay with your partner. So it needs to always be a discussion. And so, when you don't say yes, the answer is no. So a lot of times, not saying anything or uh, um, that's not a yes, that's a no. And we like to kind of give the visual or break it down by fries. So consent's freely given, it's reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. As I've said 900 times presentation, and silence, it's not a form of consent. And then here, nonverbal cues are important. So it's important to teach, our youth, especially to read body language of other people. If you can tell that someone's getting uncomfortable, then stop. You know, that's a no. It's not yes. So speaking of teens, and I know I keep mentioning teens a lot, but that I feel like is where the education really needs to start. So hopefully you're able to walk away with this. If you know someone who is younger, have children, or someone in your house that is a teen, you're able to kind of, fit this to them as well. But tech abuse, this applies to everyone because technology is everywhere. So tech abuse is a form of controlling and abusive behavior that involves the use of technology to stalk, harass, or threaten someone else. So we have things, like cyber stalking. I'm sure that's something that we've all heard of, right? So this is any unwanted harassment or contact via electronic devices. People can use social media, text messages, any of that stuff to track and harass others. I know that there are a lot of people who are dealing with, like the Apple AirTags that you can put on your keychains so that you don't lose your keys, things like that. A lot of people have discovered that others will put Apple AirTags, under the hood of a car or tape it to stick it to the bottom of a car, and they can track where that person is going. So there's so many different types of technology that it's horrifying to realize how easy it is to keep tabs on someone. Um, but also, even aside from that, there are things, image-based abuse, and this isn't any non-consensual image sharing. So extortion, that's huge. Blackmailing, using, hanging something over someone's head. And then here we have deep fake. So this is an image that has been edited or, manipulated to look like someone else when it's not, especially, with things like all the AI technology that's coming out. It's scary because you can do anything with an image and make it look like it's somebody else these days. So this is definitely a conversation that we need to be having with our youth, is how scary this is and how dangerous this is. I mean, if you're sending a picture to a significant other and you think it's a great idea at the time, especially for the younger people, something I like to really stress to youth is that if you're sending a picture, would your, trusted adult that you go to, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, whoever, would you send it to them? And if the answer is no, then you don't need to press send. Also realize that yes, you might be sending this to your boyfriend and you trust him, or your girlfriend and you trust her, but you know, 10 other people are going to have that image as well. They're going to see it. So it's never safe. And even, pressing delete, it's still out there. And it's so easy to take an image. Even accidents happen. I mean, if you send an image, maybe that image gets leaked accidentally, and then that's a whole nother situation. So this is something that we really need to be aware of, especially in how quickly technology is evolving every single day. So, something else, these are, just kind of red flags, super quick and easy things that will help you identify if a relationship is unhealthy or not. So, if you are noticing these things or you see these things in someone else's relationship, it's not a good thing. It's a red flag. Name calling, embarrassment, putting you down emotionally. Maybe they're very overreactive. So one little bitty minor inconvenience is a whole blow up and an explosion. Um, and here, discourage you from participating in activities. So it's very important that, we remember, yes, you can love someone and you can be, head over heels for them, but you've got to have activities and people and things that you're interested in apart from each other. And, that should be something that each of you encourage in each other. If it's getting to the point where you can no longer go to volleyball practice or your volleyball league that you're in, or your book club, you're not allowed to go there anymore, it's a problem, or your partner's showing those jealous tendencies, that's a red flag, because you need to have those things for yourself. And then here, getting jealous easily, this is something, again, kind of circling back to our youth, that we really need to instill in their brains that jealousy may seem cute and it may seem like something that you want. You want your partner to be jealous, but it's not a good thing and it's not a healthy habit to have at all. Um, they threaten harm, have a history of abuse, or pressure you. Here, this history of abuse, definitely pay attention to the things that you are noticing, or if you come from a small area, word of mouth spreads. So if you're hearing things that maybe that person has in their past, have a conversation with them. But a history of abuse, history repeats itself, unfortunately. So don't ignore those small things because they may seem small now, but they build up quickly. All right, and so here we kind of have a chart, and if you are, obviously you're digitally with me, but if you're on a phone or a computer, if you could just take a picture of this is a great visual to have. And I, obtained this picture when I was attending a Purple One training. They are a great, um, it was a great training. I learned a lot, but this kind of breaks down the different actions that you may see in the different categories. So that physical, emotional, social or environmental, and then sexual abuse. And so it kind of goes from yellow, orange, red to least dangerous. I guess you could view it to most dangerous or most lethal or fatal here. So things like pinching, ignoring feelings, joking, making sexual jokes, like in each of the categories, it shows you what's, okay, this is a dangerous action. And then it kind of spills down even more to, well, that pinching, eventually that's going to turn into bruising, or that's going to turn into being punched. Or ignoring feelings, that's eventually going to turn into, putting down your abilities to work, or how good of a parent you are. Um, Retaliation, threatening, child custody, or those jokes and those, they're minimizing you as a person. Eventually, that's going to isolate you. So if we're on that double date and I'm constantly making you feel small, or I'm humiliating you, you're not going to want to go on any more double dates with me. You're not gonna want to go anywhere with another group of people with me. So I don't want to go anywhere if I might be embarrassed. So now I'm isolated. Um, all of these things, they kind of trickle down to, maybe it starts here. Maybe my girlfriend is making sexual jokes and I think it's funny, and maybe the jokes aren't even about me or have anything to do with me or our relationship. But eventually, months later, I'm, being forced to have sex or watch sex of others or things like that. And then eventually I'm being threatened to, participate in sexual activities that I don't want to participate in. And these things are what we really need to be paying attention to, of course, because these are lethal, very, very dangerous. But we can't overlook the yellow here because this is, where it could start. And each of these, it almost like has a partner in the worst category. So it might start here, but it can turn red and fatal quickly. So now that we've talked about some of the unhealthy tendencies and red flags and what that looks like, we're going to talk about what a healthy relationship looks like. It's a little easier of a conversation for sure. But the three categories here that we like to kind of think of is respect, honesty, and communication. So, are you valuing each other's opinions and needs? Are you in a relationship where you feel like you can bring anything to the table, any conversation is a safe, place to have that conversation. You're not fearful of any retaliation that may happen from, what you're trying to talk about. Um, and then that communication, that active listening and conflict resolution, which is hard. Active listening as an adult, at least for me, I know I struggle with this all the time and I don't do it intentionally, but it's something, even with conflict resolution, that we constantly, even as adults, have to practice, right? And this is something that is great to model for younger generations. So if you have a household and children are seeing their parents or grandparents or whoever takes care of them actively listen to each other and really be involved in good, healthy conversations. And anytime there is a conflict, they're working through the issues. They're more likely to do that as well. And habits, kids pick up habits easily and quickly. They modeling is very important. So the more that we practice each of these skills, the more that our youth will see, okay, that's what I should be doing instead of getting jealous of where my partner is. Maybe have a conversation about why I feel this way or my boundaries and things like that. So here are some of the green flags. These are what we want to see in every relationship. So being treated as an equal, your partner is sensitive to your feelings, they're responding sensitively, they accept you as you are, you're not feeling like you need to change for them. Willing to discuss problems and disagreements, so you're not frightened or worried or hesitant to bring any disagreement to the table. Like I mentioned, anything, is a safe discussion. Do they listen to and understand you? And then here, do they give you that personal space when you just need time to go do something that you like, or maybe you just need time to just be alone? Do they accept that? And it can be hard. It can be hard as a partner. You want to be there for the other person, regardless of what they're going through, but understanding too, that my partner is going through something and they need that space to heal themselves, and that's okay. And so here are some safety tips that we kind of like to give everyone. So first and foremost, have a plan. If you feel that you are in a relationship that is unhealthy or has those unhealthy tendencies, make sure that you are kind of putting in a little safety plan for yourself. So this could look like having an extra set of keys hidden or having copies of those very important documents, having second copies of those hidden somewhere that you could access easily without anyone knowing. Having an extra little phone just hidden somewhere where if your partner, takes your phone from you and looks through your phone, you have this extra spare little flip phone or something that you can go to and call for help or reach out to that person that you go to help with or for. Just small things like that make it easier for you to leave if you're able to, or to ask for help if you're able to. Also, making those boundaries clear from the start. This is more of a preventative measure than it is, whereas having a plan is, this conversation is more of a, okay, I found myself in this situation, so now what do I do? But making those boundaries clear from the start. So again, having those healthy conversations from the jump. These are my non-negotiables. this is what I will not tolerate. Um, for myself, just having those conversations are very important. And again, you can revisit boundaries. Your boundaries don't have to stay the exact same for every year that you're in that relationship. Boundaries can shift, but having those conversations are important. And, constantly being on the same page with each other is important. And then here, another kind of preventative measure. This is to, we encourage everyone to get to know their, a potential partner on a friend level. So this will kind of help you be able to see what they're like as a human being before a romantic partner, right? So what are they interested in? Maybe they like things that I don't even know what in the world they're talking about, or hobbies that you've never even experienced before. You can learn from them, or maybe it's something that, okay, that's their thing. When they do their thing, I go do my thing. It just kind of helps having those conversations later a lot easier, and it helps you connect on a more stable foundation than just a romantic foundation. Romantic foundations, those honeymoon phases and all that, that's where those red flags are overlooked. So when your foundation is more stable, obviously the house is able to be built in a healthier way. And then just a couple of things to keep in mind. You are in control even when you feel like you're not. So, you never have to stay in a relationship that is hurtful, and, a healthy relationship, it should make you feel safe and supported and confident, and you're able to be who you want to be. You have the right to your own identity. You can change your mind at any moment. And you shouldn't have to live in fear. You have the right to end a relationship at any point in time. And mainly, it's always important to remember that it's not your fault. Any abuse that you may be going through, you didn't cause that. That is not something that, is your fault, is basically it. Um, and then when it comes to seeking help, don't accept excuses. So when an abuser sees that their victim is reaching out for help, if they find out that they're reaching out for help, that's a very dangerous time for a victim because their abuser is losing that power and control. And they may start making excuses for their behavior. Well, I promise I won't punch holes in the wall anymore, or I promise, not to get upset when you go to family dinner with your family, things like that. And then be safe. So if you feel like your relationship is coming to a point where you're ready to call quits, break up in an area that is public. So if things start to go south, you have eyewitnesses, you have people there that are able to help you if need be. And also let trusted others, adults, know what's going on. So maybe if that's even just one or two people that you feel like you could, they would take a secret to the grave for you, let them know what you're going through just in case. So, I'm planning on breaking up with my significant other tomorrow. If I don't call you, 15 minutes after 3 o'clock, I need you to call me and make sure that I'm okay. Or, that's a sign that I'm not okay. Something has gone wrong. So some things like that, and having that safety plan, like we talked about before. And then here, seeking out those friends and trusted adults, confidants, organizations that are in your community. There are a lot. There are a lot of resources that get overlooked because, well, we don't need a resource until we need it, right? And a lot of times when you need something, you're in a situation where it's not easily accessible anymore. So be familiar with your community, and what's around you. And then here, keep a log of events. So a lot of times, if something bad is happening, our brain, we want to push it away and forget about it. That's our brain's way of protecting us. But instead of deleting that harassing text message because you just want to be done, you want to be done with that person, keep a log of it and make sure that you're clear. I don't want you to contact me anymore. Stop calling me, stop emailing me. And then keep a log of all of the events that are taking place after that. So that way, if you decide to seek legal action, a peace order, a protective order, you have evidence of their behavior, and that's going to help you in the long run. And then here, take legal action if you're able. And always, 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 please make sure that you are contacting 911 if you are assaulted, threatened, or stalked, or any immediate danger. before you seek out, local organizations and things, please make sure that you are contacting 911 for that immediate assistance. And so here, maybe, you're not in this situation, but you're watching this video because this is something that resonates with you and you know someone who is in this situation, which is a lot of us actually. So if you see something or if you get that intuitive feeling or that gut instinct, then definitely speak up. And if you don't feel safe to speak up in that situation, find, a resource that you can give the person that you're worried about. Maybe it's very discreet. A little piece of paper with your phone number on it. It doesn't even have to have your name, doesn't have to have anything about what you've witnessed, but just something so that they know, okay, there's somebody out there that I can call or text or whatever in the event that I need help. Um, and then maybe it's a person that you do know, you can offer to actively listen. So, being honest with them too. I don't know what you're going through. I've never been through that, but I'm here to listen. If you just need someone to vent to, or if you need someone to kind of be that familiar face in the next steps that you're about to take. Um, Providing that support and resources, and here, not victim blaming. So, this is a tough one. I'm sure we've all heard the question, and a lot of us have probably even thought it too. Well, why doesn't he or she just leave? If it's so bad, just pack a bag and hit the road. But that, phrases and questions like that really put the blame on the victim when we should be putting the blame on the perpetrator. So instead of asking questions like that, ask questions like, do you feel safe? Or, really, hypothetically and theoretically, we should be asking questions like, well, why does he hit you? Or why is she stalking you? Why is she harassing you? Things like that. Those are what we should be asking, so that we're avoiding the victim blaming. And then here, never underestimate the danger that someone else is in. So we, can talk about trauma and how trauma presents itself all day long, really. But for one example, a lot of people will show how uncomfortable they are with a situation through humor. And that can be dismissed as, oh, well, they're laughing about it, they're joking about it, so obviously they're fine. But really pay attention to the things that someone is saying, because if they have been in a cycle of abuse for so long, their brain may no longer even register the fact or the depth of danger that they're in. So you may be a great ear, or fresh set of eyes to tell them like this is not safe and this is not okay. Let's do something about this. Regardless of how they're acting, how they're showing that trauma, it is trauma and it's very dangerous, the situation that they're in. And then last, but certainly not least, honestly, probably most importantly, let them set the pace of leaving and healing or seeking assistance. So a lot of times, when we think of that question, well, why doesn't she just leave? Or why does he stay? Things like that. We need to understand that the most important time for a victim of domestic violence is when they are trying to leave. That is when you see the most homicides occurring, because the perpetrator knows that I'm losing grip and I'm losing power and control of my person, and they will act out in lethal ways. Um, and the victim knows that. They know exactly what's going to happen. They know the repercussions of all of their actions. So even if on Tuesday your best friend comes to you and it's like, okay, this is the time that I'm going to leave. This is it. This is attempt number 12. Because we know it takes, an average of 7 times to actually leave. But maybe this is, time number 12. And on Wednesday morning, I'm leaving. I'm going to take my documents that I've stored away and my extra set of keys, and I am gone. But then Wednesday at lunchtime, they come to you, and I couldn't do it. I didn't feel like it was the right thing to do at the moment. Trying not to get frustrated or show that frustration, to them that you're feeling is important, because as soon as they realize that what they're doing is frustrating, or, you know, um, they feel wrong for what they did, they're going to stop coming to you for help and they're going to be further isolated, but also realize that they know their situation better than anyone else. So maybe last night just wasn't a good night, and their partner was extremely explosive, and it's not a good time to leave. So letting them set their own pace, but just constantly being a constant support for them is more helpful than anything really. So we're going to talk about some of the services that we provide here at CAP. We offer a 24-hour crisis hotline, and there's our hotline number right there. This is great for, those situations where, maybe you just feel alone and you need someone to reach out to, or maybe you're interested in some of the services that we provide. Um, our hotline workers can get you set up with exactly what you need. And if we don't provide that service here, we will refer you to a place that does. So we also provide one-on-one therapy for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. This can be virtual or in person with one of our therapists here. It really just depends on what is most comfortable and easiest for you. We also provide an abuse intervention program. So this is our AIP program, and this is a state certified 26-week program that helps perpetrators of domestic violence kind of work through what they're experiencing, right? So why are they doing what they're doing? This is voluntary, or a lot of times it's court ordered as well. But if someone is recognizing those red flags even in themselves, this is an avenue that they could take as kind of like a preventative measure to really kind of get to the root of the issue before it becomes, a big problem. We also provide victim advocacy. So our victim advocates can meet you in court. So maybe you are going to file a protective order and you have no idea where to start because the legal system can be very confusing and overwhelming. Our court advocate can meet you there and walk you through all of the steps of exactly what to do and remind you of, the follow-up date, and that it's very important to come back and follow through until the very end, or else your case will be thrown out and like it never happened. So just little things like that. It's almost having like a little pocket buddy, or some people even, describe it as like a security blanket, just having that familiar face sitting there in court with me. I know that I'm okay and I'm not alone. That's a great service that we provide. We also will accompany a victim to the hospital. So we have people on call 24/7, 7 days a week, rain or shine, holiday or not. That if someone is in the hospital who has just been sexually assaulted, or there's a belief to be domestic violence, we get called and we will come and, offer our services, be, someone who will sit through different exams with victims. So that's a great service that we provide as well. I think that a lot of people don't realize that it's here. We also provide community education, so things just like this. This is my entire job. We will come out to businesses, schools, anywhere that will have us, pretty much. We will come out and talk about domestic violence or healthy relationships, restraining orders, protective orders versus peace orders, like all of the different things. Anything that you feel like you need to be educated on, we can provide that. We also have a virtual peer support group, and this is honestly one of my favorite services that we provide. So this is a peer support group that is virtual on Thursday nights, and a lot of people may not be ready to have, one-on-one therapy. They're just not there in life yet, and that's completely fine. So what this is you call into our hotline, hey, I want to be a part of the virtual peer support group. Our hotline worker will get you sent over to our therapist who is in charge of that, and you will be sent the Zoom link. You can attend with your camera on or off. It's up to you. Maybe you just want to listen. But this is nice because a therapist is on the line and is on a Zoom call, but she doesn't really, step in unless she's needed, or you want to talk to her one-on-one for a few questions or anything. But this is very led by the peers. This is a great, empowering group for women to kind of come together and talk about their experiences, resources that have helped them. Right now, we only have this for women because we don't have enough men to start the support group for men. But it is there and it's available for you every single week. We also have volunteer opportunities. So if you are interested in, maybe going to court and helping out our court advocate, or going to the hospital and just some of those advocacy pieces and, going into the community and spreading our information and awareness on what we do, we have those opportunities here for you. So if you're interested in any volunteer opportunities, you can just call our hotline and they will get you set up with everything you may need. So I hope that, you were able to gather some very helpful information from this, quick presentation. We will have more presentations like this recorded, so that way you can go back and watch it if you miss our lunch and learn, hour or time. But I hope that you found something helpful. Please remember to call us if you need anything. We are here to help you. Thank you.